Today we're talking about broad human rights education, and by broad, I mean across disciplines, across areas of society. And I want to point out that human rights education, abbreviated by HRE, occurs in learning contexts for children and adults. We've talked about that earlier in this program. It starts the minute a child is born through observations of what that child sees, even before the child understands the language it's in. And it continues all throughout life, even for senior citizens who are trying to understand their rights and why some of them are denied. So higher education includes courses, certificates, and degrees. These are all different programs that are offered, and I just did a sampling. So here's one in India, Indira Gandhi National Open University. Let's see if I can get this open. I apologize. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Oh, we're back to here. Let me try one more time, and if it doesn't work this time, we'll just not open the website and look at the programs. No, not working. Anyway, students, you can see that there are many, many programs here. So the Indira Gandhi National Open University has a certificate you can get in human rights. And certificates are very, very valuable. You don't need a degree in an area to put it in your resume or your curriculum vitae, as we use it in higher education, to show that you've been trained in something that's very important to the organization that wants to employ you or an organization that you want to advise or service. So they provide a certificate in human rights education. The Indian Institute of Human Rights has a postgraduate diploma. So after you graduate, but if you don't want to get a degree, you can go get a postgraduate diploma in human rights. The University of Washington, this is where I live in Washington, has a human rights minor for students. So they have a major field of study, and then they can have a minor field of study there, and they have a minor that you finish along with your major degree at the undergraduate. Certification to higher level degrees, more advanced degrees, I should say, because they're all very important. The University of Nairobi in Kenya has a Master of Human Rights Education, and that one and the next one, Master of Law, are very, very widespread. You have several programs here in India. So for the professions, these are the ones that most commonly have training in human rights. Some of the training is before they enter into the profession, such as required courses in their programs, or certification, if not courses. And some of them are complete degrees that are offered to them while they're in their program. So educators, teachers, professors, this is in their programs and their training. That's why I'm here. You're in the field of education. Civil servants, people who work for the government, are expected to be trained in human rights and understand the rules of human rights. I'm sure that would be for their nation as well as for the global United Nations rules and human rights. The military especially need to know about human rights because they're often thrown into areas of violence, and there are very clear rules about what can be done to people and not done to people in situations of violence. Law enforcement, this one comes up a lot in the literature about human rights. So police, special forces, they have to have training in human rights before they even get into their profession, or as they're entering it, as they have to have training in that. But several of them have advancement of the education in human rights during their profession. Refresher courses or even whole degrees. I've read studies, and I may share one with you, about law enforcement training and degrees offered online programs. So if it's not where they are working, they can go get a master's in human rights while they're working in law enforcement. And then judges. Judges definitely have to be aware of and trained in human rights, and many other people who are working around and with them. So organizations support awareness, learning, and research along with action and partnership for human rights education. And you have been looking into organizations that you can tap in to informally educate about human rights through actions, human rights actions. And we talked about how you can do that using the 3D model in the community with people who need to have their dreams built, their awareness built, and they need a way to do something about human rights. They need some help in doing that. So organizations, there are several in the world. And now with the internet, you can access several of them that may not even have a chapter right here in Aizawl and Mizoram, but you can still access them and work with them. And so they offer, again, learning opportunities. Some of them have courses. A lot of them have courses, actually. Some of them partner with universities and colleges to offer degrees. I know that when I was working at one university, I was asked to help facilitate a master's degree in partnership with Amnesty International and with the Peace Corps, and helping them with Amnesty International with what they offered. Speaking of that, so I, in another university where I taught, I became a faculty sponsor for students who wanted to have their own Amnesty International club right on campus. And this was a university, a very large university, with many, many colleges and many different types of degrees and levels of degrees. And students were very attracted to this opportunity to meet on campus and have guest speakers and hold events and take action, just through the sponsorship of Amnesty International. So I became the faculty facilitator of that by just enabling their access to the resources they needed to do that. So you can do the same here. Okay, and then we shared some research before we started the session live, and that how some of these organizations are posting research. They're finding research studies and posting them to informally educate. So Amnesty International report on India, I don't know. Let's see if I can get this open. Today. Why websites aren't. Yesterday everything was opening, and today they're. Oh, okay. Are you? Thank you for your patience. We're going to check if the Wi-Fi is working, because today it seems none of the websites are working that I want to share with you. No, is that it? So I'll just quit trying then. Okay. Well, if you see the Wi-Fi comes back on, let me know. Okay. It's all right. So we'll go back to, I think we were here. Thank you. Okay, so Amnesty International, the report on India, is a very rich report, and I encourage you to find that page. and look at the different issues that they're addressing right here in India, and progress and the need for progress. Those are all, because you can see it right there on the webpage of Amnesty International, and they have links for each country of the world. You can see all kinds of opportunities to facilitate human rights actions right here. And then another one that's really commonly used is Human Rights Watch, the report on India. And again, there are many stories there about what can be addressed right here in India. So research on human rights. The National Human Rights Commission of India supports and publishes research. Before we turned on this session, I shared one research study with you by Singh about the experience of transgenders in India and their lack of education and support to finish their education, and how that negatively affects many of their lives. So I can't click on it because the Wi-Fi is not working, but you can go there and look at yourself, National Human Rights Commission on India, much of the research that they publish. And they support researchers, and all of you in this audience are scholars, and you're interested in doing research and actually doing research right now. This is a direction you can go, and it's a place you can publish your work. And publication of your work is very important for many reasons. So you can share your findings with others who are interested in the topic, and you can get some credit for that in your career as it's advancing. So an example of research, here's a link, but I can't open it. Paving the Way Forward, Challenges for Protection, Dissemination, and Promotion of Human Rights Education in the Law Schools of North India. So this one is about what the law schools are offering and what they need to do to make their offerings more available to everybody and more complete. If I remember right, because I read this one a few days ago, I think it suggested that the law schools become more organized in their plan, and so that, you know, in this place students would learn this, and in that place students would learn that, which needs to go on in education everywhere, lay out the plan. So this was a link to human rights institutions supporting education in India. I collected several of them and can't show it, but they're there. And they're for you to find when you can get access to Wi-Fi. Okay, so that's my first one. I know we're hurrying a little more today because you have presentations to do as scholars. I'm so excited about that. And let me see if I can get to something that's not on the internet here that I want to share with you. This is from one of Monisha Bajaj's books about human rights education in India. And what she did in this book is she described in detail in this chapter the curriculum of one of the programs that was used in human rights education. And she quantified the topics that were used and the methods. So there's a hierarchy here at the top. What are we doing? I think we're trying to get me on Wi-Fi. So thank you for your patience. So this is about one curriculum and what was presented in the curriculum. So let's have a look. So this is a frequency measure. So these were the most frequent to the least frequent topics in that human rights curriculum in the schools. The number one topic was poverty, underdevelopment, and class inequalities. Then I don't know if this is big enough for you to see back there, but I'll read it off anyway. Gender discrimination and need for equal treatment. Then child labor and children's rights. 4, caste discrimination, untouchability, and the need for equality. 5, social movements, examples of leaders and activists. 6, religious intolerance, the need for harmony and pluralism between the religions in India. 7, rights of tribal peoples, and in this case, Adivasi communities. This is where she was watching, again, the facilitation of one curriculum, and so that's why she's bringing up that community, because it was very relevant. The curriculum was relevant to the people right there. Rights of disabled and mentally ill, democracy, and environmental rights. And the methods for teaching this in the schools: reflective participatory in-class exercises, illustrated dialogue or stories, community interviews, investigation and research, small group work, discussion, creative artistic expression, class presentations, inquiry, questions, and essay writing, role play, dramatization, songwriting, letter writing to officials, and school or community campaign. What do you think of this? Would you teach this in the same order? Would you use all those methods? Do you feel ready to use all this is India. This is one curriculum in India. If they provided it, your school to use it. What do you think? Give me a thumbs up if you think it would be useful to you as a teacher in India. Okay. Would you change the methods? Would there be another method that you would move up to the top besides reflective in-class exercises? I think I would move inquiry questions up, not necessarily essay writing, but finding out what's going on. I think I would probably move that up to number 1, because the students need to know what's going on right around them in their community. And in every single teacher education course I ever taught, I had the students go out in community and do interviews. So to me, that would be very important for them to inquire what's going on in the community and come back and share that information while protecting the identities when needed of the people that they interviewed. We call them interviewees. I would move that up. And letter writing to officials, I would also move that up. That is one that I've had students do at all levels from 3rd grade, 3rd form on up. That was very empowering for the students in the primary grades and lower elementary school, or I don't know what you call it here, but grades 3 through 4 or 5. Very empowering for them because the officials didn't know they were children. So they wrote to the officials in their city, in their area, in their state, and they got replies on official letterhead because, you know, that's what your elected officials are supposed to do. So when you have your students write to officials, one, they're in democracy, they're representing the voice of the people, and the officials are supposed to pay attention to that and actually quantify how much communication they have towards different perspectives and different desires of the people they represent. So the more your students write to them, the more they're actually influenced. They don't have to be old enough to even legally vote, but they can influence their local representatives in a representative democracy. So anyway, that was really, really empowering for students, and some of them even framed their letters from officials, especially when it came from a federal government. So I would move that up. And in topics, I would probably move up children near the top, because if you're teaching students, a lot of them are children or no children, and children aren't quite often told they have rights. They don't know they're not supposed to endure abuse. They don't know they're not supposed to be working somewhere and should be in school. Or for whatever reason, they can't get to school. And we talked about earlier in this course several reasons why children can't get their education, young children, and can't get to school or they can't stay in school. So I would move that up. But that's me and where I live and teach. So that's what I would do. But this is really important for you to think about and prioritize. And of course, all of this is a curriculum for formal education. There's a whole lot to do in informal education. Please.
So I guess one of the problems that we have in India is that our officials, or the ones who are in power, are not held accountable enough for the powers that they hold. And in that case, letter writing might not necessarily be very effective. And therefore, especially in the case of like human rights and this kind of issues, I like from my observations. Even within Mizoram, the informal education, say, for example, you mobilize some people, you create some kind of peer groups and like-minded people on social media, you mobilize people, and then share resources. So in that sense, yeah, writing letter. But then again, so in India, we have this RTI, where you Right to Information Act, where you have to fill out a certain form so that you give or you get some information from the government. Otherwise, they won't give you. Or, yeah, so press statements in the form of groups like peer pressure is more effective, instead of like writing a letter, because usually we don't get response here, and I think, yeah, also to think about the IHRE and the formal education that we have here, it's not necessarily effective at times, because I'm quite surprised also, because if we look at what's happening in India right now, and then to because in the previous slides also you have mentioned the mandatory training in human rights education for certain professions, and we also observe that those are the people who were supposed to safeguard human rights are the ones who sometimes violate them. Women doesn't feel safe in the police stations. The military are the ones who are violating human rights, as we experience so frequently. So, I mean, I'm also beginning to wonder how the visa situation with you might also be, I don't know. If we can.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So all of these challenges, and yes, what I said is working on the assumption that in a community, when you're writing, the students are writing letters, that they will get a response. But even if they don't get a response, there's value in having them communicate, and putting them on the internet to post something. I have hesitancy about, unless they're accompanied by a very knowledgeable adult, because they may get involved in something that's quite dangerous and connected to people who may not have good intentions. And so, in fact, we're starting to create more and more rights statements about what can happen to children and adults online, and what do people have the right to do when they're connected to the internet. So if I were going to have students post something on social media or on the internet, I would definitely have them supervised closely in all those communications with that form of communicating. But any kind of communication, any kind that's respectful, is important. Even if they don't get a response, it's important. You're training them to, first of all, you're giving them the knowledge that there are these rights, but you're training them to be a participatory citizen where they are. Even if they're migrants, they can organize. One of the research studies that I was looking at earlier today on the Indian Human Rights Commission postings, was about migrant children and their realities and how they're working instead of getting an education, even though there are all these laws, national and international, that say, no, they need an education. They need to not be in the field working or not wherever else they're working. They need an education no matter what nation they're from. They have a right to education. Even they need to get organized. And I know that one of the places I've lived, there were a lot of migrant workers, children and adults, and people were, citizens of the area were recognizing the abuse. Most of them were working in tomato fields and recognizing the abuse that they were enduring and how children were not getting an education, nobody doing anything about it. So they became, citizens who became aware of it became allies. And allies is, I'm sure you're aware of the word, but it's A-L-L-I-E-S. An ally is someone who may not be suffering from the condition, but is going to stand next to or support the person who is suffering. And so anyway, these people became allies and they formed their own group and they started boycotts around the whole state of tomatoes. So we all just quit buying tomatoes, and of course that hurt the migrant workers, but it hurt the farmers. They stopped making money. We even got the restaurants to stop serving tomatoes. That was hard on the Italians and the Mexicans because everything's with tomatoes. But then we got people to stop patronizing those places for about a year, and it started economically hurting. So they got some attention to the situation. And the name of the organization now is the Immokalee Workers, and the Immokalee Farms is where they are. And it's still active, and people are still keeping track that these migrant workers are treated humanely and that the children can get the education that all the right statements say they deserve. So, just getting a voice for those who are silenced or helping them use their voice is critically important. Okay, we're doing on time. I know you have presentations today. So that's how I would reorder these methods. And I thank you for the insights that you don't always have representative democracy who's going to read your letters and respond to your letters. But I think the whole act of just communicating. Also, I have gone with my students to support them, and sometimes they've gone on their own, to the offices of the representatives to say, we need a meeting. We need to talk about this issue. And they're always busy. But if you keep after them, you'll get your meeting. And then you fill the office with as many people as you can. Just like a school board meeting, you get as many people as you can to go there, not just one voice, to bring up the issue. And document that you did that. And they're supposed to document it too. So many ways to communicate. Okay, and so this is just looking at one curriculum in India and the topics that were most frequently used and the methods that were most frequently used for human rights education. And we think now maybe the internet's working, so let me see if I can close this. And, I'm going to share this one with you while I have it open, and if I can get back to some links later that might not work. This is an indigenous university, Ixtal University in Guatemala, is made up of the Maya people in Guatemala. This is south of Mexico. And Guatemala had a 36-year civil war, and they've experienced violence for generations there. But one form of violence that this article brings up is structural violence, particularly in the universities, that does not promote and embrace the knowledge of the indigenous people. So what they did in this area, trying to decolonize higher education, is they started their own, the Mayans started their own university, Ixtal, and it became so popular that other groups of indigenous peoples have started other universities that embrace their knowledge, share their knowledge, and prepare them for professions with their knowledge. So I'm going to read just a couple paragraphs to you here. So the Ixtal region consists of 3 Ixtal Maya municipalities located in the western highlands of Guatemala. Recently, the arrival of mega projects such as hydroelectric dams and mining in the Ixtal region has been referred to as the new or fourth invasion, since they have created social divisions, violence, environmental degradation, and persecution of community leaders. I know this has gone on in India too. The 3 previous invasions consisted of Spanish colonization, the creation of coffee plantations at the end of the 19th century and early 20th century, which had a lot of forced labor on those plantations, and the Guatemalan Civil War, respectively, and are characterized by foreign intervention, genocide, displacement, state-sponsored violence, and resistance. It is within this historical socio-political context that the Ixtal created the Ixtal University to empower the communities and defend their territory. The curriculum of the Ixtal University focuses on 3 objectives: territorial development, management of resources and environmental preservation, and Ixtal history and culture. Much of the curriculum seeks to prepare students to recover their identity, culture, and history, as well as prepare them to defend their community's natural resources and territories, especially with the arrival of mega projects in the region. The Ixtal University is an innovative initiative, unprecedented in Guatemala, that has received national and international media coverage and has inspired other Maya groups to create their own universities. In his opening remarks entitled it's in Spanish, Pluralism, Decolonization, and Constellations of Knowledge, translated to English, at the oral thesis defense of the first cohort in Ixtal University held in November 2013, when then rector, which is their word for chancellor, Vitulino Similax claimed, "This academic exercise is meant to cultivate our own cosmovisions, wisdoms, technologies, values and principles, productive and economic models, cultural practices that do not form part of the classical European North American formal curriculums, nor with the idea of forming professionals for the free market, but instead to understand, transform the needs and demands of their communities. The participants of Ixtal University with this process forms and strengthens their own capacities and potential. They're prepared to become entrepreneurs and not employees, managers and subjects of their own destinies and not the objects of destiny." So I'll stop with that. So the article goes on to describe how one of the problems they have in the community are the communities there, the indigenous communities, is when the members of the community get higher education, they often don't come back to the community and help the community. They don't work for the community. They go out into society and they get high-paying jobs because of their degrees. So that's a drain on their communities. So in Ixtal University, they're trying to prepare them, and they are. They're successfully preparing their students to come back into the community and not pursue economics, not pursue a high paycheck, but to be a lawyer, to be a doctor, to be a teacher in their own community for whatever the community can afford, to preserve that community, to advance that community. And so this is Indigenous higher education and human rights, and this is an example of not recolonizing, trying not to recolonize after independence a long time earlier. Okay, how are we doing on time? I'm not sure when to give you your break. Can somebody give me a signal when it's time for a break? I don't know, you have something coming sometimes. Is somebody gonna let me know? You'll let me know. Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, I showed you that one. Close it out. I could go back to here, 9. I closed it when let's open it and see if we can open some of those links that I wanted to share with them. Okay, and get it at full screen. It'd be easier. Thank you. So I don't know, do you want to look at any of these programs? Give me a thumbs up if you do, or tell me which ones. Okay, which ones? All of them? One of them? All of them. Okay, let's look at some of these programs. Indira Gandhi National Open. I think we're going, yeah. Okay, so thank you so much. Let's see if I can enlarge it, because it's too hard for you to see, I think. I'm afraid to touch anything. I'm just going to tell you about it if you can't see it, because I don't know how to enlarge this. So here's the certificate in human rights. It takes 6 months to 2 years to do. There's no age limit. And it's in English and Hindi. Human rights are those, and here's the program overview. Human rights are those which every human being enjoys in the base of equality, irrespective of caste, race, religion, place of birth, sex, or other economic and social status. And then it points out that these rights that are brought up in the certificate program are about those identified in the Indian Constitution and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we ought to probably prepare a certificate for you for being here in this course. Maybe it's the same amount of hours. Okay, so here it is, Certificate in Human Rights. Is there a link here you'd like me to click on? Okay, let me see if I can hopefully get back to, there you go. The postgraduate diploma, University of Washington, that's a long ways away. Oh no, this is the Indian Institute of Human Rights, excuse me. Let's do the ones in India that are closer. This one is really interesting to me because it's not a university and anybody can get into it, and they have a very comprehensive program. The Indian Institute of Human Rights, and it has, you can even see the whole curriculum when you explore their links. So I've had fun, excuse me, looking through. These are the objectives of the program. How do I enlarge this? Can you help me show this to them? I'm so sorry. Thank you. These are the aims and objectives of the program. Number 7, to bring diplomatic and commercial pressures on regimes that violate human rights, to ensure that they respect the basic rights of their citizens. This is activism. I think this belongs in every human rights program. Here's a part of their research you would do in the course, to prepare case studies on the rising custodial deaths, killings, and encounters and related issues for ensuring that human rights education must address the need of evolving new structures of knowledge and accountability, to import new skills and sensitivities, and so on. So case studies. You're scholars, you'd be good at that. 21, to study the philosophical and cultural basis and historical perspectives on human rights. And I think that's really important because you need to see that it's not just coming from the last century. It's not just coming from the United Nations. It's throughout human history, especially in the area of Southeast Asia. So many rich traditions and philosophies here that were humanistic and precursors to modern notions of human rights. So these are some of the things you would do there. And let's see, to collect data, number 33, to collect data relating to the existing educational and training facilities in the areas of human rights and civil liberties in different parts of the world. So they're even examining these other programs that provide degrees in human rights. They're examining what they have, probably their contents, maybe their quality, maybe how they're organized. That would be very important to know and then pass on to other institutions. And then to publish when you're in this program, to publish and share what you've learned. Okay, human rights minor in Canada, Bachelor of Human Rights and Social Justice. Anybody want to see this? Give me a thumbs up if you want, because I don't know which ones you want to explore. Okay, University of Nairobi. Let's look at their Master of Human Rights. Good. Objective of the program, the goal of the program is to develop professional practitioners with expertise in the key areas of human rights, namely conceptual knowledge, theoretical knowledge, methodological tools, and applied skills. So I think that's very important that you actually have applications throughout your education to use in the education program what you're studying. So let's see, structure, maybe I'll give you a picture of the curriculum. Modes of delivery, face-to-face and online. Distance learning. You might want to check this out if you're interested in this master's degree, because it is available online. University of Arizona, whoops, let's look at this one. Master of Law in Indigenous Studies.
We know that human rights served as empowering tools while simultaneously hampering claims to national independence. So do you think the idea and politics of human rights as a key feature of decolonization process?
I'm sorry, would you repeat it one more time? A couple words in there, I'm not sure I heard right.
Okay, we know that human rights served as empowering tools while simultaneously hampering claims to national independence. So do you think the idea and politics of human rights as a key feature to decolonization process?
Okay, yeah, the role of human rights, and when you say human rights, its role, I think you mean in enforcement or facilitation of human rights, impeding decolonization. Am I getting this right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yes, especially when the rights are in contradiction with the culture and the goals where they're being enforced. And so, I think I brought up one or two examples earlier, but I can't bring it up enough. So when a nation needs some support and asks for a loan or loan forgiveness if it has borrowed money. The lenders can tie to that loan, and they often do, the language of human rights. So they can say, for instance, all right, if this state, this nation of any type who borrowed the money doesn't show through data collection or some way, but usually somebody collects data on this, that there has been progress towards the goal that was set in the language of the loan, then the loan is not forgiven, or the interest is increased, or the loan's not made. So economic leverage has been tied to human rights. And as I also pointed out, states have found a way around that by trying to keep the language of human rights out of those loan agreements, those trade agreements. This is even more common in areas where there are sweatshops, where there is oppressive labor practice, and that is, somebody's making the money on the products that slaves or underpaid people, oppressed people of whatever identity are working in. The money's not being passed down to them. Quite often these places end up in revolution because people can only starve so much. And then they try to, change the situation, and that's understandable. And as that movement starts happening, the government tries to then hold the people down and increase the military, increase the force. So all of this, yes, is disruptive. So I think it's really important for each region, and as we've seen here, India has done its work here since in the middle of the last century, when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was drafted. India was a part of that. So it's a long tradition here in India, but India has so much diversity. It's a very big country with so many different types of people and all of their particularities and all of their needs, that even just the rights stated in India are probably too general to address the particular needs of each region. And so, that's why regions can make their own statements and then get a negotiation with the National Commission on Human Rights and the government about, these are our particular needs here. And I know those requests have been made. So anyway, decolonization, trying to become more independent in your ways, to just the upshot of this question, yes, is very difficult when you're answering to a measure that is not aligned with your culture or not aligned with your goal. And the Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations has made is, partially responsible for recolonization, where an economic agenda has been pushed as the main goal for the regions of the world. And yes, economics is important because people need to be able to survive and eat. But capitalism is not the only way that people can do that. And particularly when we're looking at indigenous cultures, they know they have a tradition, most recent tradition, of surviving. Land-based knowledge is very, very important. And using the resources, the natural resources of an area, and keeping that knowledge alive and passing it on to the next generation. It's not in the curriculum of the formal education schools. It's not getting passed on, and this is very upsetting for many reasons. So, recolonization is negatively affecting the ability to pass on that very important indigenous knowledge. Did I answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. It's still not, I didn't get the thumbs up, it's still not break time, right? Keep going. All right, yes, a couple times I kept you too long, but I know we need to get out of here by 1 today, so. All right, so this is this Indigenous rights program. It's in a law school. The LLM is a Master of Laws degree that's really common. Are we ready now for our break? Yeah, I'm getting the thumbs up. Okay, I'll leave this open. You go take your break. We can turn the camera off during our break. Go ahead, take a break.